One day, while driving around on a pretty spring day around the back roads near my house, I saw this sign for a place called Wilhoit Springs, and, having nothing better to do, veered right and followed a picturesque country road to a dead end in a tiny parking lot next to an open meadow on one side and a simple, picnic-perfect park dotted with shade trees. There was nobody else there. As it turns out, this quiet, unassuming park, tucked nearly 8 miles from the center of town, was once a bustling resort where people would come from all over the state to rest, relax, and take the purportedly curative waters of Wilhoit Springs. In its heyday, Wilhoit Springs was the #1 tourist draw in Clackamas County. In 1866, pioneer John Wilhoit put a land claim on this piece of property and sold it just a few years later to Frank McLaren, who decided that the mineral springs would be the perfect springboard for a health and pleasure resort. By the early 1870s, McLaren had created enough of a buzz about the restorative nature of the mineral water bubbling up out of the ground that people started arriving and camping at the property in droves. People stayed on, sometimes for weeks, to soak up the atmosphere, and by 1882, Wilhoit Springs was a full-tilt resort, with a daily stage service bringing guests to and fro from Molalla and Salem and even Portland. The property still had camping available for those without much money, but for those who could pay, there was a fine hotel with fine dining, cabins, bathhouses, a swimming pool, a band pavilion, even a bowling alley. People paid just 25 cents a day to come into the park, and kids were free. In a letter to a local newspaper, a man named A. Stevens wrote a lengthy article about his 4-week stay at Wilhoit, listing the various dances, music offerings, recitations, and readings given. "We have quite a variety of people here," Mr. Stevens says. "The high and the low, the rich and the poor, the lawyer and the doctor, the merchant and the banker, the clodhopper and the granger, all on the level." Of course, aside from the pleasant atmosphere, people came here for the water, which was advertised as curative. During the latter part of the 19th century, restorative water cures, or hydrotherapy, were popular for rejuvenating health. Wilhoit Springs actually had 2 springs, one sulfur and one soda. It was the soda water that was most popular, as it bubbled out cold straight from the ground and already fizzed up from naturally occurring carbon dioxide. McLaren talked up the properties of his waters, even creating a bottled water product, listing all of the properties found in the spring water, which were, I'm sure you want to know, carbonated sodium, magnesia, lime, iron, and acid gas. In large enough quantities, the water could actually relieve some symptoms for heartburn, anemia, constipation, and some skin conditions, so the claims weren't totally bogus, although it's yet to be discovered if the water cured other ailments listed on advertisements, such as typhoid fever, nervous prostration, rheumatism, jaundice, and something called water brash. And they did stretch the truth quite a bit when advertisements went out claiming that men attracted to strong drink could be relieved of that particular ailment by coming and drinking the spring's purifying waters. Despite the restorative nature of the waters, in the end, Wilhoit Springs' popularity was pretty fleeting. The First World War took a toll on the economy, as well as the morale of the nation, and the resort began to decline. McLaren sold the property, but it never regained its former glory under the new owner. In the 1920s, a fire broke out at the Big Log Hotel and put an end to the resort once and for all. The post office closed in 1928. The property sat fairly neglected until 1955, when it was bought and sold to a developer who let it fall into further neglect. It was acquired by Clackamas County through default a few years later. Though run down, a few buildings still remained on the old property, but in 1962 a great windstorm swept through the county, destroying much of what remained, and that was that. The buildings were demolished and carted away, and the famous wells that once drew visitors for miles were capped. Today it sits here, quiet and peaceful. A hand pump was placed over one of the wells, after several people got up in arms about the wells being capped, so you can still actually take the waters here if you like. In fact, home beer brewers often visit the springs, as they say these waters make an excellent base for a pale ale. For me, I just appreciate the quiet, though it would have been a lot of fun to see it in its heyday. Next time I visit you, I'll bring you a jug. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little trip down Mollalla's memory lane, our little trip to Wilhoit Springs, and I hope to send you another video soon. All right, bye.